Do you remember the AT&T and Verizon service blackouts from a few months ago? Maybe you really like to spend time outside in the summer or even the winter. You like to go hunting, camping, fishing. You like to go floating down the river with your buddies. If you're anything like me, the lack of cell service during events like those kind of bothers you. You wish you had another way to talk to people, even just locally. You're floating down a river and your buddy, he gets impatient and he goes half a mile ahead of you. Or you'd like to talk with a loved one in town, maybe a loved one out of state. Fortunately, amateur radio can provide you with anything from local to cross-continental global communications. Now, I myself have been a licensed technician class amateur for 2.5 months now. I got my license December of last year, so I have some experience, but I'm also pretty new to the hobby, so I know what it's like to just get into it. So by the end of the speech, I want you to know 3 things, or have some sort of understanding of 3 things. And that would be what amateur radio is, propagation characteristics on the frequency bands, and how to actually get started in the hobby. So now that we have the purpose in mind, let's talk about the actual definition. Amateur radio, or more specifically the amateur radio services, are defined as the amateur service, the amateur satellite service, and the radio amateur civil emergency service. Moreover, the amateur service is defined as a radio communication service for the purpose of self-training, intercommunication, like for when your buddy goes a mile ahead of you down the river, and technical investigations carried out by amateurs, that is, duly authorized persons interested in radio technique solely with a personal aim and without pecuniary interest. And that comes from Title 47 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Section 97.3. So with that formal explanation behind us, let's get into the more tangible aspects of amateur radio. So generally, propagation happens in one of 2 ways, and that depends on the frequency being used. The high frequency bands generally make use of the ionosphere, the part of the atmosphere that's responsible for auroras, to refract radio waves hundreds or thousands of miles away from the originating station. Now, more advanced versions of this, or not necessarily advanced, but more curtailed versions of this, such as near vertical incidence skywave, exist, which takes skywave and reins in your signal to a much closer area, and it does this by irradiating your radio wave at a much more aggressive angle, causing it to shower down at a much more aggressive angle, making a smaller zone where your signal can be heard, about 300 miles max from everything I've heard. Now, this is explored further in Hussain's master's thesis, which I used as a source for this speech. Contrary to this, the very high and ultra-high frequency bands are generally not refracted by the ionosphere. They're limited to line of sight. So, I'm talking on my radio. Someone's got to have line of sight to me to hear me. And this is explored in great detail in Barclay and others' textbook, Propagation of Radio Waves. That's the name of it. Now, other means of propagation on VHF and UHF, such as meteor scatter, exist, which uses the ionized trails left behind by meteors to scatter your radio wave signal out in all sorts of directions in hundreds of miles. So that's nice if you want to get out further, but it's not quite as reliable as just high-frequency radios are. And that came from Whitson and Ralston of the Institute of Electrical Engineers. So now that we've talked about propagation, we need to talk about how to actually get started in the hobby. Now, as I showed this off earlier, this is a Baofeng GT, or not? It's not a GT5R. It's a UV5R. They're almost the same radio. It's about $20 on Amazon, and this antenna is $17. Less than $50 altogether. Nice little rig. It's great for getting your start in the hobby. Now, once again, according to Title 47 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Sections 97.501 and 97.503, there are 3 classes of licenses available to amateurs in the U.S. That would be Technician class, the one I have, General class, and Amateur Extra class. For Technician and General class license, you have to pass a 35-question test with 26 correctly answered questions. And for Amateur Extra, you have to get 37 out of 50 questions right. It's really not that hard. I used a website called hamstudy.org to take practice tests again and again until I could remember all the answers. That really helped me out. And I did use that website later to book a session over Zoom to actually test for my license, and I got it, obviously. So another great way to get started in the hobby that I would recommend is looking for a local amateur radio club. In Fairbanks, we have the Arctic Amateur Radio Club. They meet on the second Friday of every month. Lovely folks. I believe they're going to be doing some testing coming up in March here, so that should be nice if you're looking to get into the hobby. So, as I'm closing this out, I want to restate what we went over here. We talked about the actual definition, we talked about propagation characteristics, and we talked about how to get started. So, as I leave you, I would like you to think about how you can apply amateur radio to your activities, to the things you like to do, your hobbies, how you can use it for your benefit. And I'll leave you with that.